Yo, better run the mic, it's the Krewe NFC, the roundtable where the real heads be. Talking NFL, the game we adore, from the touchdowns to the legends and so much more. That bumping guy, he's got the stats on lock, dropping knowledge on the field, watching every block. Back and bleeding green, cheering loud and proud. In the sea of cheese, heads are standing out the crowd. I can't hear with the looks and the smarts, breaking down the plays and he does it with heart. Then the stout, solid like the line. His takes are heavy, his vision's divine. Week by week we break the game down, from every big play to every new crown. Offense, defense, we cover it all, from the springtime draft to the winner's last call. It's not just a podcast, it's a fan's lifeline, connecting every moment from the vines to the side.
Good morning. Welcome, Krewe NFC Roundtable. The off-season 2025. It's been a while since we've been in here, guys. How you doing?
Fantastic.
There's that energy. Wow, Brian, where'd that come from? I'm used to that.
Hey, it's the off season.
It's been a weird off season. I mean, I just not as excited about this draft as I normally would be about the NFL draft. I don't know if it's the lack of caliber of athlete or I don't know. I just am not as excited. I don't think Shador Sanders is that big a deal. I don't think that Cam Ward's that big of a deal. So go ahead, Andy.
I think it's your team. That would make anybody. That would.
Well, I mean,
anybody.
We don't have much we got to do. We're ready. We're a playoff contender right now.
For which sport, though?
Anyway, a lot of dead time for us, so we've got to really jump back into this, get something going here. So let's go look at the Bears, Andy. You got three really needs on your in your area. First of which is a new stadium. Can't draft that. Second of which is a new stadium, and the third would be winning tradition. So how are we going to address those?
Okay.
How are we going to address those needs?
This freaking guy. So, a couple of things. The stadium, of course, will eventually work itself out. They're still, of course, looking at the heights. I think they did a couple of studies. That's the next step into, possibly making whatever changes need to be changed, either widening certain roads or adding different type of transportational needs, trains, for example, whichever the case might be. So, you could conceivably actually go to Chicago or whichever the case is, take the train all the way out to potentially Arlington Heights, of course, and you get off on your little Chicago Bears, I guess you could say, area. Then of course you have all the different shops and all the different, things that you can do there before actually going to watching a Bears victory. Then of course you would have like the obverse, which would be like absolute and utter, horrid, kind of like the Packers stadium. First off, the paint job is green. It's just terrible. And I know Brian's going to start yawning pretty soon, so he's going to have to be like a Scooby and take a little Scooby snack, a little Cheez-It or something like that. You want to be the cheesiest, want to be the crunchiest.
Seriously though, I saw something today. This is definitely a long shot, but I had seen where they're talking about building a lakefront stadium. I think it said in Arlington for both the Cincinnati Bengals and Chicago Bears to play at. It would take less tax dollar from the citizens, and it would be basically paying for itself with dual the amount of games there. That can't happen.
Where would this be?
They said in Arlington.
For the Chicago Bears and the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah, yes. Basically what I believe the Bengals lease is up next year?
Right.
Or is it
I think it's next year.
And I know they've been in a fight with the city of Cincinnati to either renovate I don't know what it's called now. It used to be called Paul Brown Stadium, but renovate that stadium or to build new with a roof so they can, because now the thing is you build an indoor stadium. Now you become a contender to host a Super Bowl, that you're basically guaranteed one. So
right.
Now they're talking about the family moving the Bengals out of Cincinnati. And, obviously with New York having two teams, well, theoretically New Jersey, but New York having two teams, LA having two teams, why can't Chicago? And honestly, it just, If that were to happen, that would be honestly the best possible scenario for honestly both teams, because you build a stadium, it's basically done and paid for with the amount of games and other things you can have at it.
Chicago can't support one team right now. Like they support the Bears. That's it. I mean, that's it. They're not going to be able to put any. I mean, Cincinnati fans will leave the Bengals. Both of them. Both of those Bengals fans will no longer cheer for the Bengals anymore. So then you'll have Chicago Bears fans and nothing in Chicago. It's going to be like the Chargers situation. The Chargers home games aren't anything right now because it's such a, I don't know, it's like a void.
Saturated. It's like oversaturated with, and besides, if you happen to be a Cincinnati fan coming from Ohio, do you really want to, drive a state and a half over? That's going to be kind of tough. If you do it in, like maybe even Indiana, Indianapolis, that kind of thing. Indianapolis is going to be like that, but then it's going to explode.
Right. I just
that is kind of interesting.
I just saw that scenario. I just thought it was definitely a unique idea. I just don't think it's something that's really feasible.
Well, also let's throw this in there. Granted, it's baseball, but the mayor of Arlington Heights also has given a phone call to Jerry Reinsdorf of the White Sox to see about doing a double stadium to where they have a baseball stadium and the football stadium at Arlington Heights.
Yeah, but then again, I don't know.
You end up being like Candlestick Park. You have grass over here, you have dirt over here. It's just that would be.
But I miss watching that on TV. To be honest, it was like any
the
multi-base,
multi-purpose stadiums.
he's cutting across the grain at the 25-yard line. He's hit third base. I mean, it's something to watch. But no,
I think they want a single-use team or single-use stadium for really a couple of reasons. Number one, you have, of course, branding. You can only put so many posters and things like that up when you have to share. You have, of course, the field. The actual grass itself. You have dirt and you have it's just going to be one of those things where it would just be better for a single-use stadium. Not to mention the seating. If you remember Candlestick Park, if you remember those, where you had to push the seats all the way back and things like that, your staff is going to increase, so which means your cost is going to increase, and of course you have groundskeepers that are going to be able to do. It would be a nightmare. There's still a possibility that it's going to be where it's always been. Maybe just actually add a few things and possibly even a top a stadium dome.
I'm still against an indoor stadium in Chicago. And maybe it's because I'm old school or old fashioned or just like to see snow on my TV when I'm watching football in, the winter months. But that's a distinct home field advantage for the Chicago Bears. Granted, they don't take advantage of it very often. They're not playing very long into the winter usually, but it's a distinct home field advantage. When you have like Green Bay Stadium is as big as the high school fields are now. They can fit as many people as IMG Academy can fit into their stadium. But there's something to be said for that. You know what I mean? There's something to be said for that old school feel of football.
Oh, absolutely. Right. You want to be a champion,
right.
You got to play in all kinds of weather.
I mean, let's see. Now we're getting that. And well, here's the thing. We're at the age now where it's like every team wants to host the Super Bowl. I mean, and it's going to take a brand new stadium with a roof on it, retractable or not, to have it. I mean, that's unless you are in Tampa or, Southern California where the weather is always nice and warm and, whatnot. It's, Green Bay obviously they'll never have a roof on the stadium. Now, Buffalo's new stadium, I believe, is outdoors, but it's going to be one of those weird ones where it's kind of like it's going to be covered over the stands, but you still have it outdoors. Yeah. So a lot of it's going to be a lot of those elements are really is going to go away with that without the open concept like it is now. I was just down in Nashville and seeing the construction of the new Titan Stadium. That's going to have a roof on it. I mean,
yeah, it's upsetting. It really is. I mean, I hate to sound like a get off my lawn Clint Eastwood type, but it's upsetting to not have outdoor winter football. I mean, it just is. Even that fall time where it's kind of cool, it's kind of warm, you got that nasty fog in Chicago, or that, the rain in Seattle. That's a big deal. That's a home field advantage that is just being overlooked. I just don't want to see it go away. Soldier Field is legendary. Same with Lambeau. Love seeing them in the snow. Yeah, I agree. The Fog Bowl. That's what I was just talking about. Chicago Bears, Philadelphia. But
plus
anyway.
you have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to like kick a field goal or kick a whatever the case is, and have the ball go 90 degrees that way. If you remember that.
And sometimes you get a kicker that's perfected the wind bend and can double doink it.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so let's talk about some of the moves that the Bears have made this offseason, Andy. You went out and you got a third wide receiver, yeah?
I haven't gotten to that point. I haven't gotten to that part yet.
You got Zacchaeus, I think it's how you say his name, from
or we can start with the coaching staff.
There you go.
And then we can go to the players.
You lead the show, brother.
Rude.
Where's my pillow?
I don't know. It's probably by your wheel of cheese. Hanker for a hunka, huh? I might be the only one who remembers that, but that's fine. That's cool. Well, naturally, if you guys remember, the Bears were actually in need, or they were searching for a head coach. And some guy decided, you know what? I've had enough here in Detroit. I'm going to jump ship and go to a real team. Ditching the zero, going to the hero. Ben Johnson, of course, was signed by the Bears in January of 25. And with him, actually, quite a few of staff members, like Dennis Allen, for example, Richard Hightower. Those are guys who have been around the league for quite some time. But then you also have some other ones. For example, quarterbacks coach J.T. Barrett. Anybody remember him? He, of course, owned Michigan football for years. Antoine Randall, some of you South Suburban Knights, also remember Randall L. He, of course, won a championship with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was, of course, always a plus, especially when you're talking about wide receivers and things like that. Dan Richard, offensive line coach. We'll get to the offensive line in a few moments, but he's actually going to have his work not necessarily cut out for him. He actually may be getting one of the easier jobs because the Bears have definitely upgraded their offensive line. Richard Smith, linebacker coach. Richard Langford and Mark Philippi, assistant strength and conditioning coaches. Now the Bears are going to start being bigger and stronger. If you remember Shelton, for example, as the starting center last year, I think they had him listed down to like 310 or something like that. 285, maybe. He was actually getting pushed. Pretty good technique every now and again, but you had certain instances where he was getting, of course, blown up off the ball. If you have a 330-pound defensive tackle, you're 280 pounds. Doesn't matter how good technique, you're going to get moved. And that's just the coaching staff in and of itself. Now, if you're talking about the actual offensive defense, now you look at offensive lines. Joe Tunney from, of course, Kansas City. He might have won a few championships out there, but he's actually going to be a major upgrade for the Bears at guard. Jonah Jackson, also guard, traded from the Rams. So what makes that kind of interesting is you're actually solidifying your two interior line positions for Drew Dalman, who, of course, is your new center. 3-year, $42 million. $28 million is actually, in fact, guaranteed. Now you have 3 tough interior linemen that are going to be able to do a couple of things that the Bears haven't had in a long time. Protect the quarterback and run the ball. What? Huh?
What's great about that is it costs you a 4th and a 6th. That's it.
Yeah,
that's outstanding.
I think the Bears still might have a few dollars left over under the cap, which is also a major plus. So,
yes, sir.
So that's just the offensive line. Now, defensive line, Ode Ingbo, I think I don't know if you were talking about him. So he was defensive end. What's that?
That was a solid pronunciation. I wasn't even going to try it.
Indeed. 3-year, $48 million, 32 guaranteed. He's actually going to be opposite of Montez Sweat, who, of course, is going to be probably getting about 20, 25 sacks this year.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway.
And, of course, Grady Jarrett. Now, Grady Jarrett is actually an exciting pickup for the Bears. 3-year, 43.5 with 28.5 guaranteed. Yeah, he's an interior lineman that can actually rush the quarterback. So if you had a defensive lineman that can just hold up that offensive line, your linebackers do what they do, but you actually get a production player out of your defensive tackle, which is a major, major plus, especially for the Bears' defensive front. Let's see. Offensive skill positions. You have, of course, that's Zacharias, wide receiver, 1 year deal. Good player, solid, not spectacular. He's not going to give you, for example, 1,000 yards. And if you are always trying to get 1,000 yards without helping your team actually win, like a player in Tampa Bay, cool. Gerald Everett, tight end. So you have a couple of players who are actually coming over with tight end. You have blocking tight ends, you have catching tight ends, and sometimes you have both. We'll see what Gerald Everett actually ends up being. Because one of those is going to be switching. Defensive backfield, Kevin Bayard, safety. You also have Jonathan Owens, 2 different safeties that are actually coming in. And you still have, of course, the Bears have a relatively solid backfield. As long as you don't pay attention to the crowd and wave and stuff like that, you should be able to actually knock down any sort of Hail Marys. You have a linebacker. We're going to say he agreed to a 1 year, $2.5 million because he does have a name that's very difficult to pronounce.
Very
and then,
good.
of course, Coleman Shelton. He was the center from last year. Of course, he began. He's also, I think, a second stringer now, which is perfectly fine. He's still, of course, in the league. Matt Pryor, offensive tackle. So the Bears have actually been incredibly busy this year. Essentially, you have your general manager going out and essentially filling all of your needs, while also being able to actually get a new coach, new staff, save a few bucks, and still have some draft picks. So if you're looking for like a masterclass on how to actually run a team, currently, it looks like the Bears. We'll have to revisit this at the end of the season and kind of go over the grade.
It really looks like you guys did a lot of shopping up in Washington. You have to change your team colors to like maroon and gold or something. You got
or not.
But so you still have some serious needs. You're definitely going to need a safety. Owens is good. He's nothing that's gonna take your breath away. The good news is that this is a safety deep draft. There's quite a few safeties that could make impact on day one. You definitely need a running back. I know Bears fans are drooling over Ashton, Genty. Still need some offensive and defensive line. Where do you go with the 10th pick, Andy?
So running back, yes. But again, I don't know if I'm just necessarily biased. I have, in fact, seen him play on several occasions. R.J. Harvey, running back from, of course, UCF. Actually, I think he's a little bit more of a solid player because he, of course, can, he can run, he can jump, he can block, he can pretty much do, all aspects of what a running back can do. And again, maybe I'm just a little bit more biased, but, if you're looking for somebody who's actually going to run the ball, he can do that. But it's those little things that you ask of running backs. Again, if you're doing like a blitz pickup or something like that, I think he does really, really well. Catches well out of the backfield. So I think he would be a little bit more of a solid pick, in my opinion, of course, than the Boise State fella. But if anything, I think they should go that route.
Okay. So if you're the general manager of the Bears, what's it going to take for a team to get you to move from the 10th pick? Say a team gives you a call. What do they have to give you to get away from that 10th pick? Say Genty's still on the board, and you get a phone call asking you, hey, we'll give you this for the 10.
So if I were like Kevin Costner in that one movie?
Yeah. Draft day?
Which one?
Draft day? Or are we talking Braveheart? I'm not sure. Both.
Indeed. Yes, Braveheart. Kevin Costner in Braveheart.
Anyway, go ahead.
So if you're looking more along those lines, you could be looking at draft picks. You could be looking at a particular player. Personally, I would probably take the player. I see how draft picks can, of course, can get a later pick who might end up being a gem, a diamond in the rough kind of a thing. But if you want to be able to win like now-ish, or a player that's kind of just on the cusp of total development that would actually be able to, and in particular, a secondary. Linebacker would be great, but yeah, quarterback, defensive back, safety in particular, because your lockdown safety is going to be able to do really wonders for you. Um, and look at Mike Brown from back in the day, the position that he played. Look at Sean Taylor, for example. Sean Taylor, for example, was just all over the field, so he was able to actually cover, safety wise, quarterback wise. He was just going from sideline to sideline. If you can get a player that's even three-quarters of what Sean Taylor used to be, and just on that cusp, that would be a major pickup for the Bears. And probably well worth maybe even like a fifth or sixth round, eighth round, 12th round, however many rounds they do these days, along with a player like that.
Well, you do have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. So if the Bears were to be able to trade back, let's say your second favorite team, the Washington Commanders, gives on the phone, gives you a jingle, and says they'll give you the 29th pick and a third round this year. Now you're adding another pick in the top 75 picks of the draft. I mean, that's something to look into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you could conceivably go with another offensive lineman. Your quarterback is supposed to be set. You have a quarterback room that's now got experience, talent, and the potential for a coach that's going to come in and actually cater his offense to your skill set. So that's also going to be a major plus. If you can grab yourself another, offensive weapon in particular, right? In particular, even so, your running back is kind of your outlet, your release valve. They can, of course, catch. If you have like a Walter Payton type of a player that can actually go downfield and catch that long pass, but you'd be able to be elusive in the backfield. But then if you also get yourself possibly a wide receiver, again, another diamond in the rough that might not necessarily have a name, but that can, wants to be able to prove himself and be able to possibly get, 1,000 yards and, 5, 6, 8 touchdowns. So it just depends. I would personally go with a player, but, if you have that opportunity to go with a draft pick and a player, or just maybe a draft pick within the same round, the same draft, I think that would be a major plus, and the Bears should move on that.
Let me add this. The Bears having all those picks like in the first 2 rounds gives them a distinct advantage in this draft, in my opinion, because they've already, like I said, just with the offseason moves alone, they've already retooled their offensive line. I mean, they're probably a player short, in my opinion, on the line. But other than that, I mean, to get the kind of talent that they have on the line, it already goes to show you they're already making major moves to help protect their prized commodity, which is Caleb Williams, right? So now you're in a position to where, you know what, we've got the 10th pick and we've got all these teams here that are looking for that distinct person that they're really looking for. You could really dangle that number 10 pick and just say, hey, highest bidder gets it. And then you add more picks, because this is a much deeper draft with linemen, defensive players, wide receivers, running backs. The quarterback position in this year's draft, where in previous drafts you had a lot of talent, there's just nothing, in my opinion.
I agree.
And there's teams that are not going to move up to grab a quarterback. However, with how deep this draft is, if somebody really wanted to take that chance and say, hey, Chicago, we really want this player, we're going to give you so-and-so for your number 10 because we really want to jump up there and get this guy because they feel convicted to do it. The Bears should just absolutely do it, rack up the picks, maybe even get some future picks for, the 2026 draft and roll. But let me ask you a question. If you were to pick between 2 players at number 10, I'm going to give you 2 players. Who would you take, Andy? Would you take Will Campbell, the offensive lineman out of LSU, or would you take Michael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia? Because those are the 2 that are mocked at 10.
I would take 2 reasons why I would take the offensive lineman. Because you're right. I think Darnell Wright's supposed to be on one of the tackles positions, and of course you're going to have I don't even know who's on the other side. So you would actually have Campbell actually over there on the other side. He's fast, he's strong, great footwork, nasty player, and he could actually help anchor your line for an extended period. So edge rush, the Bears currently have that all squared away with, you have at least 3 edge rushers that they actually have that they're going to constantly be able to actually rotate in on Sweat, to the other 2 guys and things like that. So you actually are going to be squared away with your edge rusher. I would definitely go with an offensive lineman. If you're actually looking at Number 10 pick. Actually, I don't have one down for my number 10 pick. I don't have a number 10 pick. But, you also have the potential for Kieran Amigdaji. He's actually offensive lineman from Yale. Chicago native, of course. He went to school at Yale, so he's a pretty sharp guy. But again, now let me ask you a quick question about, let's say, I know quarterbacks have been a little bit lackluster this year, for example, but how about Quinn Ewers? Where do you see him going in the draft?
Yeah. Day 2, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not really sold on any of these quarterbacks in the draft this year. Cam Ward's a great athlete. I'm not sure he's going to transition well as a quarterback. I don't know. I don't think Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders is more of a project than he is anything else. And then, like you said, Quinn Ewers, I think he's day 2. I don't think he's. I don't have a lot of faith in quarterbacks in this draft.
So
I just don't. I think with the teams that are looking for a quarterback per se, I think right now, options wise, there just isn't any, and that's why you're kind of starting to see like more. There's now rumors that Kirk Cousins might end up waiving his no trade and get traded to somebody. That's why Aaron Rodgers is all but probably signing with Pittsburgh, because they see kind of what we're seeing, at least what we think we're seeing, is that quarterback talent just isn't there in this draft. It's next year. Next year is going to be good. Yeah, it might actually turn out, depending on how well he plays at Texas, it might be the Arch Manning sweepstakes next year. So,
yeah,
I just think this year is just not. There's not going to be teams jockeying for quarterbacks. It's going to be more of, okay, if this player if we can get this player at a certain number, do we make the move and trade? That's basically what it is. You might not see a lot of trades in this draft. This is the draft that's going to be kind of like, okay, where's our needs at? Let's fill it at our spot, because there just isn't that one single player that we have to get.
Right.
So if you had the choice between Sanders and Ewers, who would you pick as your quarterback?
Ooh, I think you take Sanders. You take Sanders. Just he's more polished. He's accurate, and he's prone to winning. Not saying Ewers isn't, but Sanders has that. I don't know. Yeah.
Sanders. You know what? He does remind me a little bit of his dad with his, the way he composes himself with questions and stuff like that. It's like, he turns a negative question into a positive. Because he doesn't let things bother him. He just goes and does it, and he doesn't care, And that's what Deion did. Deion ignored the hate. He just went out there and just schooled everybody, is what he did. So, if you're going to look at that way, he was raised that way. So he's already got the mentality to where, say, he gets drafted by the Giants, right? He's going to be able to handle that New York media.
He will, but will he be able to handle losing? That's what I worry about with him, is because he's so used to he's successful. He's very successful. But how do you get up? How do you pick yourself up? How do you go about? How do you go about winning? You got to learn that.
On that wavelength, if you were to pick up Travis Hunter, where do you put him? Do you make him an offensive player? Do you make him a defensive player exclusively?
I think he's better suited to be a defensive player in the NFL. That's just me. Maybe it's because I'm a defensive-minded person. But, yeah, I think he's better suited to play defense in the NFL. But let's go to Green Bay, Brian. We wasted half the show talking about the Bears.
As we should. Predicted. It should be 3/4 of the time, Bears.
As predicted. Packers have pretty much been sitting on their thumbs for the most part this offseason. You did sign big-name wide receiver McCall Hardman. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah, trust me.
But-
It's the only, and I said this as we ended last season. I said, in order for the Packers to be a contender to go to a Super Bowl, they have to fix the receiver room. You've got Glass Joe Christian Watson who can't catch a ball. You've got, I mean, literally, you have guys. It's just guys. There's no alphas. It's just dudes. It's all it
the
is.
good news is with McCall Hardman, you got someone that's sure hand.
I know. It's a joke, and trust me, Gutekunst is getting heat for all this because he had opportunities to get some of the receivers that were on the free agency market. But as I told you guys, the Packers don't do the free agent market. They draft and they develop. That's what that's always been with Green Bay. It's not, they don't just hand out the money. It's like, hey, you're an awesome receiver. We're going to give you a crap ton of money to come play for us. They just don't do that. That's the way Green Bay has always rolled. So yeah, so we get McCall Hardman. Ooh, yeah, that's scary for people. They did acquire Aaron Banks from San Francisco. Obviously they paid him 4 years, $77 million. Obviously that's the going rate, but this will be interesting to see. So now that Josh Myers is gone, who was their center, it looks to me like they're going to try to move Elton Jenkins to center, which he used to play. And supposedly they feel like he's a better center than Josh Myers was. So this will be an interesting thing to see the shift on the line, or if they go into the draft and draft a center. I personally would personally look at it, but it's not exactly a need, especially if Jenkins is ready to play center. They did sign Nate Hobbs from the former Raiders cornerback. They are basically predicting, and basically I'm seeing the news, Atlanta's all over trading for Jair Alexander. I think Alexander is all but gone. So this is basically the replacement, which is fine. The only concern I have is he's missed 16 games over the past 3 seasons, and he's not played a full season since he came into the NFL. That
sounds like a
me
Bucs
bit.
cornerback.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how all teams are right now, right? Corners and receivers don't finish the season.
Right.
So,
And then they are bringing back McManus on a 3-year, $15.3 million contract because obviously they couldn't get the kicker position corrected since Mason Crosby left. I think it's worth it. At least you get him for 3 years, and then maybe you just scout after the draft, just look at all the kickers, give them tryouts, see what they can do in the next couple of years or whatever. We'll see. Other than that, that's basically all the moves they've made. Again, it upsets me to the core that, especially when your star running back Josh Jacobs is basically begging for them to get a star receiver, they still don't do it. So,
well, the good news is in this draft you have 3 picks in the first 4 days, or the first 2 days. So I mean that's good. You don't have a second round pick, 23rd, 87th, 123rd. So you're kind of handcuffed there, right? I don't think you have. You could trade up maybe, but what are you going to give to trade up? Another draft pick?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something the Packers, once again, I mean, they do jockey trades in the draft, at least historically they have, but they're very, how do I put it? They're very methodical on how they do it, because what they try to do is they just say, okay, we're not sure what we're going to pick at this pick. So we'll trade it to somebody. We'll swap picks with them, but we'll get an extra pick for 2026 or whatever. That's what they usually do. And honestly, with the draft, the needs, obviously, they're still looking for defensive players, in particular at the corner position, in particular at the edge position.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think with wide receiver being a question mark, I really want to see what they try to do in that. Now, a couple of the mocks that I've looked at from like NFL.com, ESPN, they've got the Packers getting Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I would like that pick. I actually think that would be good. And this would kill the trend of the Packers not drafting a receiver in the first round. How many years did Aaron Rodgers complain about that, right?
Right.
So that completely bucks the trend. However, I've looked up a couple of other scenarios for the Packers at 23. So the Packers could draft linebacker Jihad Campbell in my first scenario, which they do need another linebacker, to be perfectly honest. But this would be something I kind of wouldn't. I guess I would disagree with it, because I think the needs are more on the edge on that. I would rather pick an edge on that. Here's a second scenario that I've read up on, that the Packers would trade their number 23 pick to the Raiders for picks 37 and 68 and a third rounder in 2026. So the meaning they won't select in the first round. They'll take the number 37 pick, and they'll take the Mississippi wide receiver Trey Harris. That's another thing I've read. And I guess that's kind of been swirling around with them in the Raiders trade. And then you have this last scenario. They added a draft pick by trading their third rounder to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That to be the number 87 pick for numbers 98 and 157. So, but in the first round, they take the edge rusher, Michael Williams. I like scenario 3 because you get your edge.
Yeah.
But will he drop that far? Who knows?
So let me ask you a question here. Do you think that the coach is going to be on the hot seat? Is this like a win now or else kind of a thing?
I don't think so. I mean, let's look at McCarthy when he was coach. I mean, they basically let him coach another. In my opinion, that he coached probably about 3 years too long in Green Bay. They don't like to make the coaching changes that quick. Now, if they struggle this year, and it is because offensively they don't have the talent to surround Jordan Love besides Josh Jacobs, you have to question the front office before the coach. But again, the coach is always going to get canned first before the GM does. It always seems to happen that way. But the thing is, with Green Bay, with the different kind of power structure that they have up there, because they don't have an owner, they are a community owned team. It's a little difficult because they vote in the GMs there. So the thing is, Goody's going to basically have to retire before Green Bay can get him out.
I'm sorry, did you say his name was Gouda?
Oh, that's cheesy.
It ain't easy.
Anyway, all
Okay,
right.
I think we're done with the puns. Please, by all
So
means.
your third scenario has them trading with the Bucs for the 87th pick. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the Packers would trade their 87 pick for numbers 98 and 157.
84th pick. Yeah. So
if you're actually looking for, obviously you guys are going to need like a wide receiver or somebody to be able to get the ball to. That's perfectly understandable. But one of the draft picks I had seen, which was actually kind of like an outlier, and it's actually kind of interesting. They were talking about a nose tackle from Texas, Devondre Sweat, because because the Packers were a 3-4, basically a 3-4 defense. Do you think a nose tackle, hardcore defensive tackle is going to be able to actually be a major plus for you guys?
I mean, with that defense, everything helps. I mean, the defense played better last year under their new defensive coordinator. The one thing they've always had trouble with this group is stopping the run. And obviously, if you plug a good nose tackle in there to clog up the run, yeah, that helps. But the thing is that the Packers could not generate any kind of pressure. And at edge, they haven't had good edge rushers, to be perfectly honest, since the what is it? The
Peppers?
Smith or no Peppers? Who is Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith? I mean, those were the two guys that did generate a lot of pressure. And then depending on the defensive coordinator, their schemes were like, Clay Matthews would rush a lot of the quarterback. He was more of a rushing linebacker than he was a, linebacker that stayed in position. So I don't know. It's interesting with their defensive setup. If they do draft a nose tackle, I would not be sad about it, because you need somebody else besides Rashawn Gary on that line to help stop the run. And Gary, he had a better second half last year after he kind of shook off the injuries he had earlier in the year. But the thing is Green Bay's problem has been defense for the last some odd years. And I've been, besides the wide receiver, I'm like, we just need somebody in there to rush the quarterback, and we're good, because I feel like their secondary players are very capable of being locked down. Let's just put it that way.
So offensive line wise, again, you have the potential for a Javon Foster from Missouri, or Christian Mahogany, guard from Boston. So do you see like interior linemen and things like that actually helping Green Bay? And well, without a wide receiver or tight end, something like that your offense is going to be able to. Why do you need a solid offensive line?
Well, you still got to protect the quarterback, obviously. But I mean, historically, Green Bay has always just found diamonds in the rough for the line, and they play well. And they've always had at least a top 15 offensive line. And, obviously injuries play a big role. I mean, when they with Bakhtiari, when he got hurt and he didn't play for basically 2 years, that was a big problem. I mean, you gave the guy big money and he couldn't even see the field, right? So to rebuild the offensive line, I mean, Jenkins did well, but as I said earlier, they're probably going to move him to center. And that's kind of a natural position for him. And this will actually help him with his health, because most of his injuries were, being on that left side. And it was kind of like, Bakhtiari, that's basically how he got hurt, was just basically he's guarding the left side and he's constantly just getting hammered. Right.
Yeah. So,
I think this is going to bode well, especially with acquiring the lineman from San Francisco. I could see them adding another offensive line. I could see them adding a center. I mean, I really could. I mean, I could be completely fooled here and thinking Elton Jenkins is going to move the center, but then they draft a center. He starts game one. They move Jenkins somewhere else, and but. I would rather, if I'm going to pick between a receiver and another offensive lineman, I honestly would want to see a receiver. I need an alpha. That's what I need.
Yeah. Well, we've wasted enough time. Let's go to Tampa Bay.
Oh, I think so. We just wasted time. We're about to waste time. That's what you're talking about.
Well, the Bucs honestly have been very, very busy. The biggest signings, I think, for the Buccaneers are bringing back Levante David for another year and bringing back Chris Godwin, who left a lot of money on the table to stay in Tampa Bay. They also re-signed guard Ben Brenison to a 3-year deal. You bring back the core players that help build this offense and help this offense click. I think that's a big step for them. The guard position has been an issue since the Super Bowl. And I think Bredesen did a solid job this year at keeping Baker upright and getting that ground game going again for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have a scenario for you guys. I want you to tell me who you would sign. Okay. I've got player A, who played 456 snaps, 14 games, had 5 total sacks, 22 total tackles. His salary is $27 million. We have a gentleman who played 573 snaps on defense, 384 snaps on special teams, totaling 957 snaps. He played in all 17 games, 4 sacks, 40 tackles. His salary is $4.5 million. Who would you rather have, player A or player B?
A.
Why would you say A?
So It would actually kind of depend. Now, let's say, for example, you have a player. Okay, we'll even take like Mac, Khalil Mack, when he was in Chicago. He had a very, very high output the year before, even the several years before. And as soon as he got to Chicago, he did well enough his first year, but then he started getting double teamed and things of that nature. So you got to look at the fact that he might have only had 4 sacks or whichever the case was, but what else was he doing? Was he actually doing a double team? Was he actually doing other things that would actually help the rest of the team actually increase who, what, when, and where? Whereas the other fellow who actually had played all games and all this other stuff might have been like a lone ranger kind of thing, and he was able to actually have some sort of success. I mean, that's perfectly fine. It's just one is actually doing more for the overall defense as opposed to one just doing his own personal accolades, which is again, it's fine because if you're left alone, you have to be able to produce. But the other guy, of course, is doing like double teams and things like that. So that's why I take it.
A sounds intriguing, but B is like, I feel like lower cost, you're playing more snaps, and you're doing more than just playing on the defensive end, that you could actually go on special teams.
Right.
That's what that's what I would go with as B.
Yeah, that's the way I lean as B. Player A is Joey Bosa, who has yet to finish the season, ended the year with 5 sacks and only 22 tackles. Player B was Anthony Nelson, is who the Bucs actually did re-sign. His salary helps open things up. He gives you a depth piece. He plays special teams. He knows the defense. He's good in coverage. I think that's a signing for the Bucs. Everyone's uptight that they didn't go out and get someone like Joey Bosa or one of the other big name edge rushers that were available. But I think that was huge for the Buccaneers. So yeah, they didn't do much else. I mean, they signed Vildor from signed cornerback Vildor. They did bring in Hassan Riddick at the edge rusher for to offset Yaya Diaby. Riddick is another one that didn't perform well last season. He really underwhelmed. Granted, he didn't play the whole season. He had that long holdout. Says he's excited to come to Tampa to play in Tampa. Jury's still out on that for me. Let's see what he does. I don't think that's that great of a signing. It does bring experience. It does bring someone that's done it before and has had success at the highest level. I just don't know if it's going to translate now going into Tampa Bay and joining this new defense. They re-signed Sterling Shepard. They signed from the Texans Charlie Heck, which is a good tackle depth piece for that offensive line. And then you signed linebacker Anthony Walker from Miami Dolphins. The Bucs linebacker room isn't that great right now. You got Levante David and a bunch of guys. Servassier Dennis, Anthony Walker. Both could be great players going forward, but right now it's just looking to see what we have, I think. And then they re-signed cornerback Bryce Hall, who was injured week 1 last year and really hasn't proven anything in Tampa Bay. Bucs have the 19th, 53rd, and 84th pick in the first 3 rounds. I'd love to see him trade back this draft. Like I said, I don't seem to think there's a lot of gotta-have players, especially picking that late. I think they can trade back and pick up someone like Shavon Ravel in the late first round, maybe even early second. There are a lot of safeties. The Bucs do need safety help if they stay at the pick. We'd love to see them pick up the kid from Georgia, Malachi Starks. I mean, there's plenty of options there. I don't think this is a complete rebuild. I think the Bucs still pretty much should run the South this year. I mean, it's
you can only just laugh, Andy. Jesus,
you can only win the division you play. I mean, look at the NFC North. Is there a team right now that you think is going to compete with the Lions for the top seed in that division? Realistically, Andy.
Yes, because Detroit is absolutely decimated as far as like coaching staff, players, things like that. So you literally have to do an entire rebuild. And then what if you go to Minnesota? Who's your quarterback there?
Yeah, Minnesota, I think, is definitely going to fall back quite a bit.
But we said that last year, though, because they're going to be starting Sam Darnold. We said that, and then we were completely wrong, right? So
were we wrong? They didn't feel the need to bring him back.
No, well, they weren't going to pay him, whatever he got. He got the Daniel Jones contract out in Seattle. So I don't know, man. In the NFC North, honestly, I will take Andy's point, because when your coaching staff gets completely depleted, I mean, you're now scrambling to find coaches to try and do something that is close to similar or similar to what you've done before. Obviously, Ben Johnson was a mastermind on the offensive end. So who's their offensive coordinator now? Is he going to run the same offense? There's a lot of question marks with how the coaching staff is. I'm not doubting the talent on Detroit. I think Detroit, on paper, yeah, they should run away with the division. But here's the thing. If the coaching is different, what you're telling me that they're just going to take off again like they did last year? I don't think so.
So you're saying it's the X's and O's, not the Jimmys and Joes?
Right.
So again, I'll bring this full circle back to Tampa. They've lost an offensive coordinator for 2 straight years, right? They won the division. Who's going to step up and beat the Bucs in the South? I don't see it happening. I think Carolina's going to be improved. I think Atlanta's going to be improved. I think New Orleans falls off because they don't have any playroom right now or any wiggle room with the salary cap. Not really going to do outstanding in the draft with players seeded. So, I mean, that's why I said, who do you see winning the North, to bring it back to my side of the table and say, who's going to beat Tampa?
Like cleaning, it's like picking up the clean end of a turd. It just simply doesn't matter. The division is so lackluster.
Oh my god!
Oh, it's so lackluster that they can again. The division has actually gotten better. Remember 2-3 years ago when they were like, what it was 7-9 or something like that, still made the playoffs. Now it's 8-9 is going to have to make the playoffs, and who knows if they're going to be able to get those 8 wins.
Well, let's look back and see the last time a team in the NFC North won a Super Bowl.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
You're the one who brought it up. You're the one who has to actually come up with that.
2000.
I ran out of pages in the history
2.
book. Wasn't 2, because that was your Bucs.
Yeah, 2001.
So, worst division in the league, or better than the NFC North? Stats or stats?
I suppose that's as accurate as it can be, and you probably want to leave it there. So, yeah, I kind of stand behind my former statement, because it's just one of those things where, what?
So, yeah.
These are when C's get degrees. That's basically what Tampa's philosophy is. Hey, C's get degrees.
So, seriously, NFC East, who catches the Eagles there?
I think if anything, I don't think they have anybody that would be able to, not the East, at least not recently, not lately. Now, if you're talking about I don't know, Buffalo?
Dallas? No.
I mean, look at it this way. I mean, Philadelphia is obviously reigns supreme Super Bowl champions. They are a team. They are the team, in my opinion, to beat in the NFC. I still think they are, even this year, and we haven't even played a snap yet. However, there is that team in Washington that came and surprised people last year. They have made moves. They have also got the draft here. I honestly think Washington's got something special cooking. And with Dallas, and obviously we're not going to talk about the Giants because they suck. And then there's the Cowboys, because Jerry Jones is more worried about smiles and glory holes. So, that's that.
Indeed. Well, real quick, let me ask you this now. Now that there's actual film on Jaden Daniels and stuff like that, do you see him having as much success as he did last year?
That's what I was gonna. That's kind of what I was getting to with this whole who's gonna catch the Eagles is once you jump from behind the couch and yell surprise is over. You know what I mean? There's no going back and coming back out and shocking anybody. So yeah, the film's out there. Someone's going to diagnose this tape and figure out a way to beat Washington. I don't think they have the talent just yet. I don't think it's there. I think they need a running back, solid running back. I think they need a couple receivers. Scary Terry's phenomenal, but they really don't have much. In my opinion, again, this is just my opinion. I don't think they're going to be as shocking to everyone they were last year. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a. I think Philly runs away with it. I don't see another team in that division. And then the NFC West is wide open.
I didn't know there was an NFC West anymore.
San Francisco's decimated.
Actually, this is a great question since now you're bringing up the NFC West. And this is when I wish we had the troll master Jerry on here, right? Listen, so all these moves that San Francisco has been making, getting rid of, high-priced players, basically, is Brock Purdy worth that much money?
I don't know. He keeps you in games, doesn't make big mistakes. But we can I can rebuttal with that. But the quarterback before him, yeah, right. I get it. Does he win? They win with you, not because of you. So why? So my question is why? Unless it's Brock Purdy's camp asking for that much money, why are you paying him that? Yeah. Why are you going to pay him that? Yeah, I don't see it. I don't know. I think San Francisco's in a world of hurt. The whole McCaffrey, they need to get out from McCaffrey. I know that's terrible to say, but I think they need to get away from him as run like the plague. See if we can get someone to take up that money, move him on. But anyway,
but they did sign who is this? Mac Jones. So you can always be the Mac Jones era in San Francisco, which I'm sure will be phenomenal.
Well,
better again. At least Mac Jones proved he's better than Trey Lance.
Again, you got a situation where they're kind of the NFC West is wide open right now. So I think you're going to get a shock there instead of in Washington. I think you're going to get the shock of the NFL. The season is going to come out of the NFC West. And
it also looks like they actually picked up Richie Grant, 49ers, safety for the 49ers. Yeah. Another product of UCF. So there you go.
Anyway, gentlemen, it's getting close to the end of the show. You guys have some closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to share with us before we get out of here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. I'm just glad this is over since it was basically half the show was bear talk.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It should be.
But we definitely need to iron out some more kinks, get back into the regular season swing of things. As always, I'd like to thank our wives and families for allowing us to be an idiot 1 hour on Sundays. We might see you next week. We don't know. We're talking about it. Until then.
Hi, my name is Andy. I'm going to talk about the Bears now. This is how I sound like.